Imagine you were taking the subway just like any other day, enjoying the ride, staring out the window as the train went underground. Then, without warning, it hit. Another train collided with yours. You remember the impact, the noise, the evacuation. Later came the injuries, the investigation, and the frustration of watching people pretend to be victims just for a payout. What happened in the subway never really left you. Welcome to Jade Unscripted. Today's true story: I was on that subway. It was a typical Sunday. I'd gone to church, as usual. I didn't stay for the entire service. Instead, I left early and made my way on the short walk to the subway station, just like I always did. I got my ticket from the machine, went through the gates, and waited on the platform. I boarded the subway for the familiar 20-minute ride. I was enjoying the ride, looking at the city views out of the window. Everything was perfectly normal until we went underground. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but as the train started heading downtown, beneath the city, going underground, that's when things took a turn that I never expected to see coming. I remember looking out of the window. We were moving kind of slow, and as we went into the underground tunnel, I saw another train coming from the left-hand side. You could see the light from it, and it was getting closer and closer. And then it hit us. I felt the impact. The whole train jerked hard. I wasn't thrown onto the floor, but I was tossed around in my seat. It was terrifying. And I saw it happen with my own eyes. Then everything stopped. The train came to a halt, and the operator got on the intercom and said, "We will get moving shortly." I remember thinking and saying out loud, "No, we're not, because we just got hit by another train." My anxiety level was through the roof. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And after a few minutes, the train operator walked into the car I was in. She opened the door right where the train had been hit. She looked out, saw the damage, and walked back to the front. About 15 minutes or so later, we had to evacuate. They got us off the train. Whoever thinks you'd actually have to use the emergency escape? We had to walk through the underground tunnel to the next station. It wasn't that far, but it felt like it took forever walking through the dark and eerie tunnel. When we got there to the next station, they called an ambulance for me and a few others. I was shaken up, and my neck and back were hurting. I remember telling the EMTs, "Hurry up, I don't want to be on the news." But sure enough, people started calling me, saying, "I saw you on the news getting into the ambulance after that subway accident." And I was like, the media moves quick. What's crazy is, after the accident, people who weren't even on the train started to claim that they were, just to get in on the payout. But I was really there. Later, the subway people called me as part of their investigation. They were trying to determine a settlement and needed to speak with all the passengers. On that call, they tried to test me. They asked, "So, when you were on the train, what did the operator say when the train hit and the train stopped? What did he say? What were his exact words?" My response was, "I don't know what his words were, but I can tell you what her words were." It was a female African-American train operator, and she said, "The train will be moving shortly," And I said, "No, it won't. We just got hit by another train." She walked to the spot where it happened, opened the door, looked out, then went back to the front. Then after I gave that level of detail, they just said, "Okay, thank you, sir. Have a nice day." And they hung up. So yeah, they were trying to switch it up like, "Oh, what did he say?" They knew without a doubt I was really on that train. I described everything exactly as it happened. Eventually, they did give me a settlement. I don't even remember exactly how much it was. What I do remember is the pain that was in my neck and the pain in my back, and how for a long time afterwards, I was too afraid to even get on the subway. Something like that, when it comes out of nowhere, shakes you up. And then to see people trying to fake their way into a payout, pretending they were part of something traumatic just to get paid, that's not just dishonest, it's insulting to those of us who were really there. I've been back on the subway since then, many times. I was on that subway, and that one ride is something I'll never forget and never want to go through again. Thank you for joining me on this true story time today. That one was, I was on that subway. It sounds like, thankfully, everyone made it through relatively okay. Still, situations like that, they really make you pause, because when you think about how many people actually rely on the subway and ride it every single day, then when we hear stories like this, it just reminds us that we are vulnerable in our everyday routines, because you never really know. And then during the evacuation through the tunnel, I can only imagine how it must have been for anyone on the train who is claustrophobic or has extreme anxiety, or who just does not like to be in dark spaces. Like, that walk through the tunnel alone would have been enough for some people, let alone the whole collision and experience on the train. But I'm glad that the sender of this story is all right after that experience. I want to give a huge thank you to the sender for trusting me enough to share your story with the rest of us. And I hope you all enjoyed it just as much as I did. Thank you. Cheers. Until we read again.